Tawanda, maybe just from an activity point of view, from your side, in oil and gas, for example, with the East African oil, pipeline that everyone is talking about, maybe just your view in when you think it will happen, how much it will cost, and what you think our involvement as Absa could be in all of that.
I think, like you rightfully say, I mean, Absa is part of a big Pan-African group. With regards to East Africa, I think we are seeing a lot of activity. Everybody knows that Uganda does have oil. Everyone knows that Kenya does have oil. The projects, when they come to market, you look at Uganda, you're talking that anywhere between 15 and 20 billion investment into the industry or into the local economy, which really equates to about 1 times their current GDP. I mean, the pipeline in essence is going to be about 3.5 to 4 billion. But beyond the numbers in terms of what our involvement will be or the way we're positioning the bank, I think ultimately we are a Pan-African bank with presence in both Kenya and Uganda. We do see us playing a role not just around the funding of the different upstream and midstream pieces, but we also see ourselves, being heavily involved in, I think, the new theme which we're seeing across Africa, which is around local content and how do the citizens of those various countries participate in the economy.
So talking about the local content and our involvement in that and how we can actually assist in uplifting, many of the smaller players, Tawanda, what do we have, as a bank, to assist in that entire process with these big projects?
Well, we have what we call a enterprise service development team. We refer to it ESD. That's been running in the Africa space for the last 2 years or so. And as of today, they have advanced loans north of 1 billion within Africa. And touch wood, none of them have ever been impaired. But just from a high level view how this works, in essence what it is we're assisting the local citizens or local companies participate in all these projects, whereby from a credit perspective, we really are taking a view on the senior sponsors in all the various projects. Yeah. And one thing which actually is interesting to note is what we have seen in some of these countries is this is not a legislated environment. This is all about, I think, everybody agreeing that, we have to see the fruits of these natural resources filtering down to the various citizens of those countries.
I think for us as well, and that's what South Africa should also focus on, is the beneficiation of many of the natural resources that's sitting in those countries. Again, beneficiation comes at a cost, you have to put certain plants, certain production facilities, certain processing facilities, you have to put that in place as well. So I think, especially in the oil and gas side, every country is reevaluating what they need to do with their natural resources, the involvement of government, government subsidiaries, national oil companies. We've seen it's a very big focus. What do we actually do with our natural resources? Clearly, each and every country needs private investments like our independent oil companies. We need government in there, we need banks into those, but again, we should never forget, like you rightfully say, the people around and the economy, and the value chain and the ecosystem, that actually goes with these big setups of industry, because only combined can it be very successful. We've picked up, and I think you must just add, to the national oil company discussion as well. We've seen in Mozambique the involvement of the national oil company is very big, very supportive of these big projects, and this is all well known in the public domain. What did you pick up from the other East African countries, the support for, these big oil and gas projects happening?
I think, obviously being a national oil company, it's important that they do play an active part within those within the various industries which they operate, whether it's upstream, midstream, or downstream. And the general theme which we are picking up is that there is not just a will, but there is an intent to be active in those spaces. And we as a bank, we are engaged in various discussions in terms of how we can optimally bring liquidity to their balance sheets. I think it's important to note, like when you look at East Africa, still in its infancy. So there is a lot of clever structures which you can bring to the table to help them to bring the liquidity which they will ultimately need in order to play a meaningful role with this natural resource which actually belongs to the country.
I think it's very exciting. I think the extent of the involvement can be in so many areas. There's the development of the actual gas and the oil field. There's obviously the pipeline that we've mentioned, the main pipeline on the East African side. We're talking about refineries possibly happening. And clearly all of this needs terminals or storage or bulk storage, terminals that needs to be built. And then there's a big import and export, component to this as well. Just maybe on the import and export, of oil or gas in its either LNG form, etc., we expect a lot of activity in that regard. Clearly, currently in Africa, there's a lot of the export of the oils, for example, on the Ghana side, on Nigeria side. We're expecting, on the Mozambican side, as soon as those liquefaction plants are all built and it's all being commissioned, that clearly that there will be a lot of LNG exported, to the rest of the world. I do think, with certain African countries, they've realized that for example, in Mozambique, not all the LNG can actually be exported. We need to grow the local economy as well. So there will be portions of the LNG, that's being processed. It will remain within the country, for obviously domestic use, for energy, domestic use, to actually build up the local industry as well. And that's the importance of the beneficiation that we've seen as well.